Cool. So now we do the rim.
Now we're going to do the rim. Here in the shop, it definitely is more convenient to let the wheel sit on a truing stand. If you don't have one of these, be careful. Now here we're just going to put a thin layer on. We don't need to gob it on. We're going to put 2 layers of glue on the rim. So the first layer is just going to adhere to the rim itself. The second layer is going to stick to the glue. Basically the gist of what we're accomplishing here is we're going to put a layer of glue on the tire, a layer of glue on the rim, and then a middle layer of glue that glues the glue to the glue. So this first layer doesn't need to be heavy and thick at all. Just a really thin coating, just enough to coat the surface is all. That also means that it's going to dry fast. You know, again, by the time I get all the way around to the beginning, it probably will have come close to drying. One other thing I should probably mention is, depending on the wheel that you're gluing this tire on, you know, this one happens to have exposed nipples. But if you've got a wheel where the nipples are hidden inside the rim, make sure and true that wheel first, because once you've got the tire on, you're not truing that thing.
That's actually it's a really good point. So how do you deal with that? Let's say a wheel goes out of true and someone comes in and says, "Hey, you know, it's totally out of true."
Well,
what do you do?
I guess there's a couple of issues there. I mean,
they're hidden.
The quick answer to the question is you take the tire off. That's the only thing you can do. However, yeah, so that took almost no time at all. However, a wheel that has hidden nipples is probably a deep dish carbon rim. That is a wheel that doesn't just go out of true particularly easily.
Would that be like a 404 or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, 404s have exposed nipples. Something like Reynolds and Edge rims
okay.
Are hidden. There's other brands, but you know, those are particularly strong rims. And deep dish rims with short spokes, they don't exactly true up. I mean, you can make them a little bit better if they're a little off, but again, the nature of those wheels, they're pretty strong, they're pretty straight. They don't really go out of true the same way that a metal rim does. So,
especially if you're just using them for racing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit different. It's one of the reasons that of the popularity of carbon, not just because of the aerodynamics, but because of their strength and overall durability. It's just, they certainly can go out of true, and especially when they're brand new like this, it's definitely a good idea to check that before you glue up the tire. Now again, if the nipples are exposed, you know, it's not that big of a deal. You don't have to worry about it too hard.
Cool.
So this is, the first layer is done now, and it's already pretty well dry. So we're going to go ahead and put the third layer, or the second layer of glue on the rim here. Before we put that layer on, we're going to grab the tire, which is definitely nicely tacked up. I mean, there's no stick to it at all at this point. Going to let the air out of it so that it turns itself right again.
And you've already put on the valve extender.
Already put the valve extenders on. Actually, that's a good point. That's another thing to remember. Any of these deep dish carbon, more than likely that tire is just going to have a relatively short valve, so it needs to be extended one way or another. This one happens to have, the cool TUFO style, which actually extends the valve. So we're going to prepare that. The reason that we do this now is once we put that heavy layer of glue on, we're ready to glue the tire on, and this just is one step that we don't have to do when we're standing here with a wet, glued up tire rim in our hands. So what we're going to do now is put another layer, a heavier layer on the rim. And as soon as that's done, we're going to take it off and install the tire right away.
Sounds good.
Now as far as how heavy, I guess it's difficult terms to put it in, but I'd say about twice as thick as the first layer you just put on. As an example, that's pretty thin there, and here's a thick.
And that's definitely not edible, right? Like if you're about to bonk, you can't just start licking that stuff.
I probably wouldn't if I were you, but then again, if you're the kind of kid who used to, eat tubes of Elmer's glue all when you were in school.
That's how I got through high school, Mark.
Hey, go for it, man. I suppose you could huff it too if you want. But I'm not advocating this.
Not at all.
Yes, technically you should do this in a well-ventilated area.
Good point.